Before we start the meeting, I'd like to check and see who's on the phone lines tonight. Trustee Garrow, are you with us? He wasn't sure whether he'd be able to make it online. Trustee Swan, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. And Superintendent Edwards, are you with us? Perhaps we'll check in later to see if she's joined the... Ironman Jeff McMillan is not with us. He's enjoying the sunshine and the afterglow of the wedding of his daughter. And Trustee Bill McPherson is not feeling well tonight, so hopefully he recovers soon and quickly. So I'd like to call this meeting to order. And before I do that, I would like to welcome the staff here tonight, and also at the back of the room, and also our two student senators from GDHS. Welcome. So, calling the meeting to order, I'd all rise for our O Canada, please. To you, Director, for roll call, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, trustees. This is our roll call for our meeting of 8 February 2017. Trustee Armour. Present. First Vice Chair Karpner.
Present.
Trustee Cram.
Present.
Trustee Garrow.
Present.
Trustee Wendy McPherson.
Present.
Trustee Bill McPherson. Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Second Vice Chair McDonald.
Present.
Chair McMillan. Trustee Richards.
Present.
Trustee Swan.
Present.
Student Trustee Grace Marr.
Present.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director, and welcome, Trustee Garrow. All right, moving on to consent agenda items 302 and 303. We need a motion to approve these agenda items. I'd like someone to move it, please. Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee McDonald. That the Upper Canada District School Board approve consent agenda items 302 and 303, February 8th, 2017, as amended, to remove agenda item 501, Cambridge Public School Improvement Plan for Student Achievement Presentation. And the reason for the removal of that item tonight is that there is a protocol that when the buses are cancelled, the principals are not expected to come and make those presentations. Am I correct, Director?
That's correct, Chair.
Any discussion on that item? Seeing none, please cast your votes.
Madam Chair, I vote yay. I'm having difficulties with my laptop, and so I'll just be listening. It's not coming in clear.
Thank you, Trustee Garrow. Okay, that motion is carried. Thank you. Any conflict of interest declarations? Seeing none. Moving on to Item number 601. This is the annual review of health and safety policies, February 8, 2017. We have a couple of motions, but I'll have Superintendent Barclay. Will we cover those motions first before the presentations by Dennis?
It's up to you, Chair.
Introduce them.
Okay, we'll introduce them. Pardon?
I think we should hear this report.
You want to go with the report first?
And then the motions.
Okay, members, you okay with that? All right. Go ahead, Superintendent Barclay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm pleased to have with us tonight our the board's health and safety specialist, Dennis Kaluk, with whom I believe all of you are familiar, because he comes annually about this time, because it's a legislative requirement that we have 3 policies related to health and safety that must be reviewed by the Board of Trustees at least annually. So I don't want to steal Dennis's thunder. I'm going to let him go through them, all to say that there are 2 that are unchanged, but this year we do have one that has some proposed changes for the board. So I'll let Dennis take you through those.
All right, thank you, Nancy. So as Nancy stated, there's three policies we're looking at. The first one is policy 226 for safe workplaces and workplace harassment, and that's one with revisions. Policy 241, violence in the workplace, and policy 424. Again, as Nancy stated, these are all policies under the occupational requirements under the Occupational Health and Safety Act for worker safety. So the first one you see up ahead, or I see ahead of me anyways, on the board is for policy 226. And this is the one we're looking at revisions. Again, it's requirement to review it on an annual basis under the Act, and this one has to do with Section 32 of the Act. The proposed changes to policy 226 are due to the Ontario Bill 132, workplace sexual harassment legislation, amendments to that section, or Section 32 of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. These amendments revised and expand the definition of workplace harassment. In the Act, it includes workplace sexual harassment and includes new requirements for workplace harassment programs. So I'll just go back to right there. So I'm just going to go through the policy and I'll spend time on the amendments we're making. So under the first part, you see the purpose. The amendments here are added, and I'll go through them here, for investigation and privacy for the employee. So as you see the yellow highlights there, management will provide an appropriate investigation in a fair and respectful and timely manner to address the complaint of workplace harassment. Information provided about the incident or complaint will not be disclosed except as necessary to protect workers, to investigate the incident or complaint, and to take appropriate corrective actions or as otherwise required by law. So that's the first one. Under the definition, under harassment, we did add or include now the harassment can include sexual harassment as defined and pursuant to the code, and that was always in there, and we just added it under the Occupational Health and Safety Act too. And then the next section has some just corrections for grammatical corrections. Under 2.3, we're looking at the definition. And again, this is right out of Section 32 of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. We've added to that workplace sexual harassment definition, which means engaging in a course of vexatious comment or conduct against a worker in a workplace because of sex, sexual orientation, gender, identity, or gender expression, where the course of comment or conduct is known or ought to reasonably be known to be unwelcome, or B, making a sexual solicitation or advance when the person is making the solicitation or advance is in a position to confer, grant, or deny a benefit or advancement to the worker, and the person knows or ought reasonably to know that the solicitation or advance is unwelcome. The next section we made a change to has to do with what is not workplace harassment. Prior to that, or the policy previous to this had a larger comment there, and what we did is we just aligned the policy with our procedure, so we made the description more concise and less procedural. So the changes we've added there, or the amendments there, is reasonable action taken by an employee, manager, or supervisor related to the direction of the workers or management of the workplace is not workplace harassment. Shorten that down.
So the other parts have been moved to the procedure.
Pardon me?
That's okay. The other
Okay.
parts have been moved to
Oh,
the
sorry, the other
procedure.
parts have been moved. Yeah, the parts that you've seen that are crossed out are now in the procedure. And move into the last one for application. Directions to where to find a policy and procedures has been added to this section. So you see the highlighted there, and it's just a reference to the board docs is what it's a reference to. So if you're looking for information as to the rights of students to a respectful working and learning environment, reference the board docs. And that's it.
Okay, so we'll deal with these three motions before we proceed with the other reports.
Yeah.
All right. So the first one is in reference to policy 226. We'll have a mover and seconder before we get any questions dealing with that particular policy, if there are any. So moved by Trustee McPherson, Wendy, seconded by Dave McDonald, Trustee McDonald. That the Upper Canada District School Board approve and document policy 226, safe workplace harassment, with revisions as submitted and a review date of February 8, 2017. Is there any discussion or questions in reference to this policy? Seeing none, would you please cast your vote?
I vote in favor.
I do as well. I haven't got it up here. There it is. Okay. All right, that one's carried. The second motion, moved by Trustee Richards, and seconded by Trustee Armour, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve and document policy 421, violence in the workplace, with a review date of February 8, 2017. Any questions about this one or comments?
Through you, Chair.
Go ahead, Trustee Swan.
Is it 241 or 421? Because it's what the number that was given conflicts with what's in our information package.
421 is the motion. Violence in the workplace. is
Thank
the
you.
one. Any other questions, discussion? Seeing none? Oh, sorry.
What was the review date that you said? Because I don't.
February 8th.
February 8, 2017,
2017.
which was
Today.
today.
And are we going to have another review date or no? It's just annual once, just okay, thank you, sorry.
Anything else? Any other trustees? Are we ready for the vote? Oh. Go ahead, please. Cast your vote.
Trustee Garrow, I vote in favor.
Thank you, Trustee Garrow. He's in favor. Oh, there it is, okay. Moving on to the next motion, number 3. We'll have that moved by Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee McDonald. That the Upper Canada District School Board approve and document policy 424, occupational health and safety, with a review date of February 8, 2017. Any discussion? Questions? Seeing none, cast your vote online, please. And Trustee Garrow,
I vote in favor.
thank you. And that's carried. All right, moving on to 602. Superintendent Barclay, you want to take it over, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as has been our practice the last several years, Dennis doing it the last 2 or 3 years, we come here once a year to review the previous fiscal year's health and safety results with a focus on worker injury results. So Dennis will take you through a PowerPoint presentation. There's also an accompanying report with more detail than the PowerPoint. He will focus on the results of 15-16, look back at 14-15, and also report plans for the year that we're in. So I'll turn it over to Dennis.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, so again, this is for school year 2015 and 16, and we're going to cover the results, the accident rates, and the resulting action plans. So again, the agenda is going to be covering the 2015 priority actions. We're going to be sharing the health and safety results from the 2015-16 school year. And again, that information comes from the School Board Cooperative, Inc., and that's where we submit our WSIB information, and they pulled together a report for us at the end of that school year to share with us. We're going to highlight some learning points, and we're going to share the action plans for the current year we're in. So again, review of programs from actions for year 2015-16. So some of the actions we focused on, first one was a focus on monthly health and safety workplace inspections. And that's really the nuts and bolts of any safety program. So continued programs to address slips, trips, and falls, ergonomics, and struck by and against, since those are some of our major accident causes. And how we communicate that out is we communicated to the board's accident performance through the Joint Health and Safety Committee, the school administrators, school locations, health and safety reps, and we do this at our annual health and safety training that takes place in October. And we also post that afterwards on our Insight, Health and Safety Insight page for sharing. Board-wide safety training is completed, and we did that in a professional activity day for the elementary schools. When we focused on that one, again, we focused on slips, trips, and falls hazards, right? That was one of our major topics. Targeted importance of eliminating hazards during monthly school health and safety inspections. And those are completed on a monthly basis at each school location. And we address the importance of workers reporting safety hazards to the supervisor when they see them. Second one we worked at over the course of that year was updating and establishing health and safety programs to meet board relevancy and legislation needs. And we did this through the Joint Health and Safety Committee and the executives. So first one we looked at was a chemical management program, which is our WMIS program. We updated that. Workplace violence prevention program, we updated that program. Worked closely with our behaviorist team. Asbestos program, updated that. Fume hood program, that was a new program we put in place to address the fume hoods that are used in our secondary school labs, to make sure that they're maintained in an appropriate manner. And then because of legislative change, we updated or created, an unpaid workers program for any unpaid workers in our school boards, mostly college and university students working in our schools. And again, that was driven by legislation. The third one is continual commitment to technology education facility program improvements, so our tech classes. Safety lockout, tagout work instructions are being worked to completion. In that year, we finished about 22% of those instructions at the different secondary schools. Ongoing review of school tools and equipment to identify opportunities to standardize for safety. And some of the things we've standardized the 3D printers and the table saws in the schools. This next slide shows the results for 2015 and 16, and these are the combined total accidents. So these are lost time accidents and no lost time accidents. We saw 129 of those compared to 118 in the previous year. This is an increase of 11 different incidents or accidents, and increased by 9.3%. You see the graph below at the bottom of the chart there. So since 2013-14, we've been below our peer group frequency. And again, we've said before other years, but our peer group, we're in the large peer group within the school board cooperative base of clients. So we break that down now. We look at the combined one. Now we're looking at just the lost time accidents. We look at an increase by 3 there, or 6.4%, compared to the year before at 47 incidents. So for the 5th straight year, the board's lost time frequency rate remains below the peer group frequency or average. And again, lost time accidents is an indicator of accident severity and may result in medical or workers' compensation costs for the board. Lost time accidents may also interrupt regular classroom consistency for students and may introduce challenges in maintaining an engaging learning environment in support of student achievements, again, because they are more severe the lost time. And the second part of that is no lost time accidents. There were 79 no lost time accidents compared to the year before, which was 71, so we showed an increase of 8 or 11%. And again, no lost time accidents do not result in an employee losing time from work. However, they can cause work disruption because workers may not be able to function at full effective levels due to reduced physical wellness. So we look at those accidents. Now we want to do an analysis on what exactly those accidents and where they took place and what kind of accidents we're having. So this is looking at the combined accidents. We see for total accidents have increased across all groups except for EAs, custodians / maintenance, and other employees. So we see an increase for elementary students from the year before, from 31 to 42 incidents. Secondary teachers from 14 to 19. Early childhood educators from 3 to 9. Educational assistants have a decrease from 37 to 33. In custodial maintenance, we saw a decrease from 15 to 11. The year before that, we saw a decrease of 16% too. So they're in a positive trend over the last couple of years, reducing the number of incidents or accidents within their workplace. If you look at the graph below, we're looking at the total. We're looking at the different types of or causes of accidents: ergonomics, slips, trips, and falls, aggression, struck by and against. If you look there, you'll see that the last 2 years now, 14-15 and 15-16, our 2 highest ones have been slips, trips, and falls, and struck by and against. This past year, it was 32 for slips, trips, and falls, and 29 for struck by and against. So we're going to look at that in more detail in the next slide. So we're looking again at the total accidents by accident location this time. So combined accidents, dominant injury types were slips, trips, and falls again, struck by and against. They represent 47 of our total accidents within the school board. On the left-hand side, accident locations for 32 slips, trips, and falls, and where are they taking place? Well, the biggest piece of the pie is classrooms, which is no surprise. That's where they spend most of the time. The next one is hallways. And then after that, it's schoolyards at 16%, and then gyms, and then offices. And non-school locations, there's still 3 incidents there. Parking lots 2, which is down from previous years, and 1 for others. And for struck by and against, we had 29 total incidents there. And again, the majority of those are in classrooms, followed by gymnasiums, schoolyards, offices, and school hallways and parking lots, and 1 school trip. So we're looking at some learning points from this. So we're looking at the slips, trips, and falls first. So that's 19% of our accidents, an increase of 19%. So an increase of 5 from 27 from the previous year. So 34% were caused by slips on wet conditions, and that's our previous one was 44, so that's down from the previous year's injury rates. Some of those things we've been focusing on within the schools is promotion and provision of yak tracks, which is a slip-on device for footwear, very effective in snow and icy conditions. We'll continue providing those and stressing the use of those. 22% were caused by trips on rugs, carpets, and objects in the classroom, hallways, or other areas. And again, so that's down from 33% from the year before. And again, one of the things we look at there too is workplace safety inspections at the schools focused on identifying and correcting potential slips, trips, and falls, hazards which could be continued if we don't, and so we're going to continue with that to address those issues within the schools for our safety inspections. And then we had some new ones too. So we had some high flyers which are new. 13% activities with students, so sports, during sports and recess. So risks associated with playing activities with students, consider whether this is necessary or looking for other options for that. And 9% equipment failures. So we had some, we're looking at workplace inspections to focus on tables, chairs, and desks because that's where the failures were. And then we're looking at increase of struck by and against by 7.4% from the previous years, so an increase of 2. Some of our learnings that we had from that was 28% caused when struck by a sports ball in a schoolyard or a gym. And that's up from the previous year of 25%. Now of that number, 88% occurred when watching or supervising sports, so worker distraction, talking to students or other distractions. And then number 2 at that, and it's the same reflection, so I'll come to that in a second here, 28% caused by student contact in classrooms and hallways. And again, that was previously 55%, so that has reduced. Of those, 63% occurred while assisting students. So one thing we looked at there, and we discussed at our health and safety training, is workplace safety inspections and supervisor feedback focusing on identifying and correcting potential positioning, so what the worker's position is, and behaviors that may result in those injuries. And then we had 7% caused by footwear, footwear not enclosed, so sandals and that kind of footwear we're looking at here. Footwear guidelines were reviewed by the Joint Health and Safety Committee, and injuries were reviewed by them too, and were being updated to address. So that's one of the recommendations we're taking to the executive is updating our health and safety our policy for footwear in the upcoming year, or this current year, I should say. And then for ergonomics, we had an increase by 13%, 3 from 24. So 28 of those were manually caused by manually assisting or lifting students, and 26 by manually lifting materials or equipment. And again, workplace safety inspections, supervisor feedback, focusing on identifying, correcting potential positioning, and or behavior that might result in injuries should continue. And one thing we talked about in our training was ask for assistance if you need it. And contacting HR for ergonomic evaluation should continue, right? That's always an option within the schools. 26% participating in sports with students, again, we're looking at that one. So that's risk associated with playing or activities with students. Consider whether this is a necessary part of the core activity. And the next one, and the last one of this grouping, is a decrease in aggression accidents. So down by 4.2, or 1 incident. 2016-15, we continued our emphasis to report accident aggression incidents to supervisors and for the Joint Health and Safety Committee to track and review. And we'll continue that and continue working with the chief psychologist team to monitor workplace violence prevention and student aggression programs and address and modify to improve workplace environments when necessary. So that was the previous year's, last year. Now we're looking at our current year that we're in, so programs, actions for 2016 and 17. Again, one of our staples is going to continue our commitment to health and safety workplace inspections and focus on prevalent accident types and their preventions. So we do that through a number of ways. One is through the Joint Health and Safety Committee promoting inspection criteria. Effective for workplace inspections, this is accomplished through semi-annual school assistance, or the Joint Health and Safety Committee members actually visit the schools and assist in the inspection on a semi-annual basis to provide assistance where necessary and give direction. Annual health and safety rep training will continue to include the Joint Health and Safety Committee facilitating hands-on or practical safety inspections, guidance for health and safety reps and administrators at school locations. The safety inspections will focus on prevalent school board hazards and controls, so we give them ideas of what to look for and how to solve some of those situations at the training. Number 2, update and or establish relevant health and safety programs. So some of the things we're looking at doing this year is working with the Joint Health and Safety Committee and the management team to update and establish health and safety programs that meet legislative needs and school board needs also. Some of the ones we're looking at doing this year, and we've started already, is workplace harassment, which you've seen tonight. Footwear program, which we're looking to update. A scent awareness program, which we currently do not have, and we're looking to establish one. Working alone, we're looking to update that one. An indoor mold contamination program, which would be for water intrusions, and that would be a new one too for us to put in place. And number 3, continue commitment to technology facilities programs, improvements through the tech programs. So continue to review school tools and equipment to identify opportunities to standardize safe tools and equipment, and also the appropriate installation needs when installing that new equipment going in. One example there is some of the bandsaws we're looking at currently. Continue to review and update safety lockout and tagout programs at the school. They can be very serious if not followed, so we want to make sure we have good programs in place to follow in the schools. That's my last slide. Any questions?
Thank you, Dennis.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Wendy, you had a question?
I was just, okay, so what we were looking at was between the early years, early childhood educators is up 200% in like 2015. So where are we taking actions in our 2016-17 to remedy those 6 increase, the 200 increase in that? Like what are you working on to reduce that high?
Those ones are a lot of those are positioning, students standing up and causing injuries. So we're looking to have doing our inspections, looking at positioning of the person. So not only just physical hazards in the workplace, but actual also positioning or behavior, how you're handling the student, how you're bending over that student, what you're placing yourself into that position.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
We have more ACs.
Trustee Cram?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Slide, I think it's 10 and 12 is the
Right.
two that I, particularly the last part, where it was new, the risk associated with playing activities with students.
Yep.
And in slide 12 as well, it says, consider whether this is necessary.
Yeah.
Can you give me an idea of what you mean by consider whether it's necessary?
Yeah, so what we've had injuries of, I think the one that there's a couple of standouts. So playing basketball or playing different sports with the students. So not teaching it, but actually participating in teacher-student activities. Also sliding, tobogganing in schoolyards with students. Those kind of activities where is it necessary to, when you're teaching, to actually play with them, or just to show them in the activity and have them or have them learn that skill that way? Or do you actually have games against the students too, right? Because some of those injuries took place with student-teacher games.
Can I follow up, Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Just have a concern when we start looking at whether we should be doing things with students or not. And some of the best times that students have is when they play a game against a teacher somewhere, and it's school spirit and it's all sorts of things. And I just hesitate to go down a road that says it's not necessary to do it at all, and they become banned in schools. I just hate to see that. So that's just and I was pleased to see that in the activities that you were looking at, the actions for 16-17, that was not one of the ones in that action. So I was pleased to see that, but it's just a caution. So thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments? Student trustee Meyer?
Chair. So I tend to agree with Trustee Cram, although I realize that it is an incident and things happen, but I do believe that you get the valuable relationships from participating with those students and not just teaching them how to do it, it's interacting with them.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you for that comment. Trustee Meyer. And Trustee McDonald.
Thank you. First a comment and then a question, and then perhaps another comment. When I look at the overall report, we've got, what I like to see. We've learned something, we've reflected, now we're going to take some action, and again, the next piece of that cycle is we're going to review it again. So that's a continuous improvement loop that I think is an important piece. The only thing that I guess I have one concern over is when I look at slide 9, the accident trips, slips, trips, and falls. There's 32 of them, is indicated to you. Yep. Small number, but on your reflection and actions, you're talking about the promotion and provision of yak tracks. Great, I think it's an important piece, but half of the slips, trips, and falls happen inside of buildings. So I'm not quite certain that yak tracks are going to prevent those slip, trips, and falls in the classroom, the hallways, and offices. So we need to make sure that if we're reviewing the data, the response needs to be at least understanding where the biggest impact is going to be potentially.
Okay.
Now, having said that, I guess skip the question. My final comment when I said small number, maybe the question is how many staff do we have first, and then I'll have my final comment.
Director?
So, Madam Chair, through you, we have just over 4,000 staff.
So I think that's an important piece for us to understand. When Dennis does this and we hear 200% increase, it's 3 to 9.
Yeah.
But the overall number of incidents or accidents that we have is 129, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? Lost time and no lost time accidents, 129.
Yep.
That's significant. That's less than 1% of our staff involved in an accident. So as much as we've seen some increases, I think it's important for us to note that a small amount of our staff are involved in these incidents on a regular basis. And it's not to diminish the work that we need to do. What I'm trying to highlight is the fact that we've got a pretty safe working environment for our staff if we look at the overall number of staff that are involved in accidents. Now, we can't say that we have none, but less than 1% of our staff, I think that's a significant number. And that's, I think, as a direct result of the work that's been going on for years and continues to happen. So that's an important piece for us to acknowledge and congratulate you on the work that you and your team are doing to make sure that that number is where it is.
Thank you.
Trustee McAllister?
I have a number of questions. The first one is with regard to student aggression. My understanding is that while we have a decrease of 1 from 24, that is not the norm across the province, and that it is increasing. I'm just wondering if this isn't something that should be addressed in one of your program actions. I know the health and safety report applies to employees and not students. I'm aware of that.
So sorry, I'm not sure. You're looking for the actions?
Yes, I'm just wondering if professional development for our employees in this area might be appropriate.
So through you, Chair. So what they do currently right now.
Excuse me, can I just ask the
sure.
director if he would respond to that question?
Sorry.
You repeat it again, Trustee McAllister?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Question, I guess, refers to the incident of student aggression. There's a decrease of 1 to 24, so a decrease of 4.2% in our board in this report. While I understand that the health and safety report applies to our employees and not to students, is there, I'm just wondering, is it appropriate that it should be a program action in terms of professional development for our staff?
Madam Chair, through you, what I would say is it's a combination of both. We know that in some instances those aggressive incidents were related to willful conduct because a student was intentionally diverting their behavior towards somebody else, and it happened to be perhaps one of our employees in the room. But we also have instances where we have students with special needs who would not be intentionalizing their actions, and because of that, it wouldn't necessarily mean a focus on school climate or safe schools. What we are doing is placing a great amount of emphasis on staff training around behavior management systems. And because of that, we believe that it helps our employees to read the environment, read the signs, and as a result of that, lessen the likelihood that they would be impacted when there's an aggressive incident.
You had further questions?
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if you could identify, Dennis, the number of machines that have been tagged this past year?
Tagged for what, sorry? Sir?
For whatever reason a machine is tagged for, whether it be inferiority or non-compliance or obsolescence,
Okay.
or whatever. Do you know that?
Director, do you want to speak up to this one as well?
Maybe just before
Dennis.
Dennis wades in. So we do tag out under two conditions. One is because a piece of equipment may be under maintenance, and so because of that, we wouldn't want anybody to use it until it's maintained. But a second instance why we would tag out a piece of equipment is because it's only to be used by a person who's qualified or trained to use the equipment. So I wouldn't want the trustees to think that that the material that's tagged out might be in relation to malfunctioning or non-functioning equipment. So just as kind of an introduction, I'll turn it over to Dennis for comment from there.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, so I know of a couple pieces of equipment that were tagged out for safety reasons. Lockout, tag-out situations took place. But we did have some equipment that, because of in elementary schools that were removed from the schools, that were tagged out before they were decommissioned. And I can't give you the numbers on those. There's two schools I know of, and right, we decommissioned those and locked those out. But we also have our facility staff trained in lockout, tagout procedures. So other lockout and tagouts may take place to regular maintenance, and that's a requirement under the regulation and acts. So if they're doing any kind of maintenance, let's say replacing a saw blade on a table saw, they would lock that out, and that would take place at the school without my knowledge, unless I happened to be there or unless they called me. And they would lock it out as per the manufacturer's instructions, replace that blade, and then reinstate it back into commission again. So those things will be happening in the schools at any time because of regular maintenance. Yeah.
Okay. Third question is, one of the criteria for the success of any policy is the number of grievances that are launched with regard to perceived infractions of the policy. Without getting into any specifics, is this an issue with regard to health and safety?
Through you, Chair. Hasn't been. We work closely with the Joint Health and Safety Committee, so we work with those affiliates within the committee. We make sure that we have their input. They're our recommending body, so they give recommendations on the policy. We obviously appreciate any recommendation they give to us, and we use, I don't say all of it, but we use some of it. We have some good discussions sometimes on where that policy should go. Yeah, so they're involved, and I'm not aware of, for policies anyways, I'm not aware of any grievances.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Cram?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Slide 11.
Yep.
The footwear guidelines. I know
Yes.
it's getting a little bit into operational aspect, but I'm just wondering if you can give us some sort of an idea what you mean by a footwear guidelines updated to address.
Yeah, sure. Through you, Chair. So what we're looking at there is a couple things. Heel height on shoes. And again, it sounds like we're looking at inappropriate footwear for the appropriate thing. So if you're doing a gym class, you shouldn't be wearing sandals, right? We've had some injuries for that, right? Slips on sandals. We've had injuries for, again, open toe or open heel footwear, or heels being hit with doors, closing behind them. So again, they're not fully enclosed footwear that they're wearing in the schools, and so those are the kind of things we're looking at and looking to put into our guideline for footwear.
So, supplemental. So are we getting into things like the construction industry where you have to have steel-toed boots to be on the floor and hard hats to be out into the site? Are we looking at that kind of thing for footwear guidelines?
For you, Chair, no, we're not. No.
Thank you.
Something appropriate, yeah.
Any other questions from the trustees? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to, thank you. There's another report to come forward?
You just want to hear more, eh?
Thank you, Dennis, for your presentation.
Thank you
It's
very
always
much.
interesting to hear what's going out on in the field out there when it comes to the nitty-gritty of safety and the health of our staff. So thank you very much for your
You have to make a
presentation.
presentation. Thank you for the invite.
All right, item 603. This is a matter that was discussed with Management Council, and it was felt that it needed to come to the board for clarification and discussion, and perhaps, or indeed a motion to come forward. I'll let Director Sliwa speak to it first, and then we'll get the motion on the floor, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I want to bring to trustees' attention probably something that's not terribly surprising, and that is that there's been a very large level of public interest in the accommodation review that the trustees commissioned in September. We've had well over 4,000 responses to our survey as of late last month, and we have a very active following at our public art meetings, both in person and online. And as a result, as the board moves closer to its focus on reviewing a final staff report later in the month, I thought it would be wise to bring forward to the trustees an option, if required or if necessary, to reserve another day for the receipt of public delegations to the board. As you know, in the critical path that the board commissioned in September, that date is Thursday the 2nd of March is the first public delegation session. And because the board commissioned the ARC process with those timelines, that critical path, it would not be appropriate or wise for staff to change anything about the process that is that significant without bringing it back to the board for their review and for motion. So as a result, staff have looked at the calendar because, as you know, the accommodation review is time sensitive, and there is a very firm timeline in which we have to provide both reports and close the process within the timelines prescribed by the Ministry of Education and our own policy. And so as a result, the staff is making the recommendation to the board that should the board desire to have an additional day to entertain public delegation presentations, staff are recommending Wednesday the 1st of March as that additional day. And secondly, that subject to the Board of Trustees' view, only if required. We may have enough time and space on the session already allocated for March 2nd to entertain the requests that come forward. But interest may also escalate with the release of the final staff report, and we would want the board to make sure that they had adequate time to give notice to the public if there was additional time being made available for the presentations.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
So I'll read the motion that is being presented by the senior team. That the move by and second by, we'll fill that in after, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve amending its building for the future pupil accommodation review process of September 28th, it should read September 2016, by adding an additional date for receiving delegations at a special meeting of the board, should it be required, is in brackets. Do I have a mover for that so we can have discussion? Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee Cram. Any comments? There is a second motion coming up later which includes the date, but this is just to amend our process. Any comments, questions? Seeing none? Cast your vote on that one, please.
Trustee Garrow, I vote in favor.
Thank you. Everyone is in agreement with that. So that is carried. And the second motion reads that the Upper Canada District School Board identify the date of Wednesday, the 1st of March 2017 as the date for an additional special board meeting to receive public delegations, should it be required, with the understanding that March 2nd will be filled first. Okay. Susan, you want to move it? Okay, Trustee Richards, Trustee McAllister. Any questions or comments about that? Trustee McPherson?
Do we have any idea of how many we're gonna be able to fit in on that night, on those nights? How many delegations we're talking about potentially?
Madam Chair, through you, I believe that we had 8, or sorry, it's 9, is the number that we have reserved for March 2nd. And currently, I believe we've had 2 expressions of interest as of late last week. Might have gone to 4 this week. So that might give the board a sense of how that current level of interest is.
We'll know more by the 15th, I guess. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, cast your vote, please.
Vote in favor. Trustee Garrow.
Thank you, Trustee Garrow. And that one's carried. So thank you for that, and time will tell whether we'll need the extra day or not. And moving on to item 604, the Safe School Policy 430. A few revisions are being suggested. Go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I'll begin, and may ask my colleague, Superintendent Coombs, to join in the dialogue depending on the nature of the questions. The board has an overarching safe schools policy as a way of identifying its direction to staff about how to proceed with matters relating to keeping our schools safe, and in terms of as it relates to follow-up and action when there has been a safe schools incident. Trustees will note that the policy has not received a review or update in a recent period, and so there's an opportunity to bring that to you as a result of a consultation with our school district's operation council, which is a table that has principal representatives are from each of our family of schools, our superintendents from the entire senior team, and also some managers from the central staff. From that dialogue last year, we did some research, did some first draft and some revisions, a subsequent draft, and we bring this draft to you this evening for your review and consideration. Essentially, it was an effort to modernize the policy based on some changes that have happened both inside the board, internal to the board, such as our Student Mental Health Advisory Circle, and some changes that have happened external to the board, including a focus on progressive discipline and mitigating factors, which are 2 very key elements in terms of looking at how schools respond to an inappropriate behavior that has been identified at a school site. So, Madam Chair, I turn that back over to you, and I welcome any questions, and would again invite also Mr. Coombs to comment if he feels there's any comment to bring forward at this time.
Okay, we'll have a motion put on the floor first before the discussion takes place, and that is the Upper Canada District School identify the date, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve Safe Schools Policy 430 with recommended revisions as submitted February 8, 2017. A mover for that motion, please. Trustee McAllister, second by Trustee McDonald. All right, opening it up for discussion. Questions? Trustee McAllister? Go ahead.
The question I have, one question I have is, we used to have a mental health work group. Is this Student Mental Health Advisory Circle to supplement that?
Madam Chair, through you, it is the one that is the most active feedback circle that we have that has, or table that we have that has been giving us advice and information most recently. It doesn't preclude any other committee that we have or group that we may have that is also providing that kind of insight. I just thought it would be wise for us to advise of that group that is currently active and that we could point to as where we've received our most recent advice.
Trustee Cram.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess two questions. One, it's a safe school policy, and yet we're taking the word safe schools out in most of the document and referring to a student mental health advisory circle. Can you give me some sort of background or reason for that?
Madam Chair, through you, that observation is correct. The focus on safe schools and healthy schools and self-care is all being placed under the umbrella of student well-being these days. Trustees may recall that OPSPA has provided an opportunity for trustees to give some feedback on a discussion paper that the ministry is circulating, and that next month they will be moving into a more definitive direction about co-locating all those foci, I guess, to being discussed more around the focus on health, well-being, and climate. So I do think that we are actually putting ourselves ahead of the curve right now, and that's a good thing. I did consult with Superintendent Coombs as well, whose portfolio is fully invested in this, and I think we both see that in the very near future we'll be bringing to you more updates as that approach becomes harmonized in the province, and there's a corresponding need for our system to harmonize how we have a policy stance on that.
Supplemental, Madam Chair?
Go ahead, please.
Just a caution that I wouldn't want to see it become just a student mental health issue as opposed to a broader sense of a safe school concept. And the other thing is I noticed in the policy that we should have trustees on that particular circle or committee as well, so just depending on when we set it up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Duly noted.
I have a question, if there's no one else. So any of the committees that are within that umbrella of safe schools still exist as they are? Like I serve on one of the ones, this disciplinary committee.
Madam Chair, through you, I'll begin, and then I'll ask Superintendent Coombs to comment. So the policy does not change those formal committees that we have that has to make decisions about student conduct, and especially under the case of appeals. But I'll ask Superintendent Coombs to comment further.
Thank you, Director, and through you, Madam Chair, that's correct. Under the auspices of Safe Schools, we've had several committees working over the years, going back to, I would say, about 2008 and 2009. This would be in conjunction with new legislation, Safe Schools Act, Bill 157, of course, Bill 13 back in 2012, which was the Safe and Accepting Schools Bill, or the Anti-Bullying Bill. We've had both wellness committees. We've also had character education committees. Certainly the Tell Them From Me data that we receive in the committee that reviews that is also included in that. Provides us with very valuable information going forward to check the compliance, but also to inform our training of our administrators going forward as well.
Thank you for that information. Good question. Trustee McAllister?
I just want to say, just a comment, I do very much support this aspect of the safe school policy and the student mental health advisory circle, because I do think it is really critical that we do monitor safe school issues and that we promote positive school environments. And I'm especially pleased to see the involvement of students in this, and I'm very pleased with that, and hopefully it will lead us to not just safer schools, but safer schools in all aspects.
Thank you, Trustee McAllister. Anyone else? All right, we'll take a vote on the motion that we approve policy 430 with the recommended revisions. Cast your vote, please.
Garrow votes for it.
Thank you, Trustee Garrow. Yes, Director, go ahead.
Madam Chair,
That's carried, by the way.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to indicate that the question about the discipline committee is still recognized under a different board policy and procedure 126, so there is no change to that committee.
Thank you. All right, moving along. Item 605, the Director's Award of Merit. This is in response to the Ipsos Reid recommendation number 5, and I'll turn it over to you, Director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it's Director's Night and an opportunity to absorb the floor here. This is a great opportunity for me to share with you how we want to, as a staff, to take the recommendation that comes out of Ipsos Reid survey feedback and to operationalize it in a way that is tangible, and I think that will be very welcomed by the organization. So as you know, we have a set of other awards. A good example is that we have the Trustee Innovation Awards, and we recognize good ideas. And we have the Service Excellence Awards, and we recognize good work. And through this award, we like to recognize the goodness in people that work for us. And I do think that fits very well with our character values, and we are certainly blessed as a board in terms of the great people that we have. And often we don't necessarily recognize their influence and impact on making the school or workplace setting a better place until actually they retire or they change departments or schools, and then we really do miss those people. And often the employees we're talking about, they're the linchpin that happens to rally people together for great causes. They happen to be the people that are our go-to people to start up a committee or a dialogue or a work group at a school. They personify collaboration, and they do it naturally, and they bring all kinds of people to the good work that they believe in. So thanks to the Ipsos Reid survey, I'm happy to say that through the senior team discussion, we've identified how we would want to recognize people who bring the best of themselves to the workplace or to their school, and who create that positive, productive, and caring environment. And we have a sort of a slight mock-up of what that announcement would look like, and following a decision by the board, should you choose to approve it, we will begin our publication strategy to bring this out to our schools and to our central departments, and to bring attention to why we're doing this, and to hopefully bring forward the nominations that would allow us to shine a bright light on people who do this kind of work naturally and often without wanting attraction or recognition for the good work that they do. So I'll turn that back over to you, Madam Chair, but I would certainly welcome any comments or questions that the board may have.
Thank you for following up on that, Director. And any questions from the trustees about what he is proposing to go forward with?
Maybe just one.
Trustee McPherson.
Oh, the advertising, how are we advertising?
Madam Chair, through you, we'll begin by bringing our principals on board at our leadership meeting this month, and from there then we'll use our usual channels of both the website and Twitter, and build that capacity with making sure that people know what it is and what it means and how it will be recognized. I know that through the director's office, we've had a variety of recognitions and honors before. The difference here is that I would like the senior team as part of that panel that reviews the applications. And that way, I think that we'll really land on a collective view about did we actually identify the right people using this criteria, and also making sure that they can bring the word forward about what this is all about. So I do think that we'll follow the usual channels, as they say, and I do think that we'll have a fair level of interest at the front end of this, and look forward to sharing with you who those people are.
And it was pointed out that this is not in competition with the Trustee Innovation Award. The Trustee Innovation Award recognizes people who are doing things in their classroom or in their workplace or wherever. He's talking more about taking the initiative of getting something going ahead of time with a group of people, I think, whenever you talk about your award.
Yeah, I think our word's about soft skills, and versus when people engage in an innovative approach that changes instruction, changes how we support a program at a school. I think that's the distinction we would want to bring out to the system.
Perfect. Trustee Cram?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question, Director. I like the award. I think it's something that is very valuable. I'm just wondering about your timeline. It's a very short timeline between now and April, whether it actually gives you enough time to implement it appropriately.
Madam Chair, through you, I think it will be tight, no question about that. But if we go at this in a fairly vigorous way, we'll get I think a good lift off. And then I think from there is an opportunity to do a second loop around publicizing the award and the recipient, and start to build a connection to what this is all about and why we feel it's so special.
Trustee McDonald?
Thank you. I think it's an important piece for us to recognize that our staff provided us some information through the Ipsos read, and one of the things that we're trying to move forward on, and I think the director is touching this with this award, is that we want to make sure that all of our staff feel valued and recognized for their efforts. And that's an important piece, right? The efforts come in many, many different shapes and sizes, and some are around innovation, some are around different things, but it's important that we recognize all of our staff for the work that they do. And I think this is a key component of that, so thank you for moving forward with this.
Anything else? Anyone else? Okay, there's no motion connected to this, so I guess you have our blessing by the looks of the response from the trustees that are present. So we look forward to seeing the outcome of that one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do too.
All right, 6:06. Next is a report from our OBSPA director, David.
Thank you. Just a real quick report. Not a lot of activity since our last meeting. Legislative Assembly is still risen, so they're not in the House. They won't return until Tuesday, February 21st, which is the day after Family Day. There has been some activity though, and right now it circles around before and after school program. It's around the continuation, or I guess their extension to grade 6, and the policy and guidelines for the school board. So following that implementation for kindergarten, full day kindergarten, there was before and after school requirements for boards. It's being extended out to grade 6 now. OBSPA did respond back in November with feedback to the ministry. On January 26th, the ministry released the final guideline document and indicated that they will provide further updated workbooks and templates to boards to help and support early learning leads in the coming weeks. Beginning in September 2017, school boards will be required to ensure that the provisions of before and after school programming for all elementary schools, where there is sufficient demand and or viability, the programming can be done directly by the board or by a third party. Programming consultation must include municipal services, service system managers, current third-party operators, parents, First Nations, and that have tuition agreements, and any other Indigenous groups that provide cultural appropriate programs. So I think it's an important piece. We know that Trustee McAllister submitted some of his comments around that as well, but it's an important piece in some of our communities that there is that extension for before and after school program. In many cases, we do have some partnerships in a lot of our schools. I know for instance in Cornwall, we have before and after school programming with Boys and Girls Club that is extended to all of our elementary students in many of our sites. And so I think it's an important piece for many of those students, those families, to have that aspect involved. So look forward to the information coming forward, and perhaps if there's any indication of an issue for the board, then perhaps we could see a staff report around with the implementation of it for September. That's it.
Any questions for our director? Bob's the director. Okay. Seeing none, we're moving on. I'll let you speak again. Director Sliwa.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. I first of all wanted to highlight how Superintendent Mills, Superintendent Allen, and I were at Maxville Public School yesterday for the Canada 150 celebration. We had 3 schools that were the lucky recipients of a draw. One was for day 1 and the honor of hosting day 1, which was Lynn Public School. I know Trustee McAllister was there and several other people from around the table. As a matter of fact, Superintendent Coombs, Superintendent Barkley, lots of folks. And day 100 was Maxville Public School, and day 150 is Wellington Public School. So there's a certain benefit that comes with that honor. Maxville Public School got 150 Canadian resources for their learning commons, and many of them were on display yesterday. Trustee McPherson was there as well, and a fair number of people from the community. You know, we were really delighted by what the students were sharing, but what really struck me is how much emphasis the school has put on students being confident public speakers. And there is a real gift there that our staff are cultivating among our children, confident and well-spoken. And they were speaking on topics that were of quite a great deal of interest. From an equity and inclusivity point of view, we had Ilizan, who was speaking about her Inuit heritage, and I thought that was really quite exciting to hear. We had presentations by Haley about residential schools, which is a very difficult topic and very complicated, and the fact that young people are examining that in their learning says that they're being prepared for a journey about reconciliation that's extremely important to all of us. How Esther talked about the Canadian Pacific Railway, and William about, and William unfortunately was absent, but to speak about women's right to vote. I thought that showed again a real maturity and focus. We can't leave Ava off the list, who talked about Maxville. She kicked off the event, and you know, Ava really set the tone for all her classmates and peers. And Altiz, I hope I pronounced her name properly, about what it meant to be proud to be Canadian. And she did such a great job. She had so much to carry. She had an assistant with her as well to underscore that. We had pipers, we had singers, we had a square dance. It was just a really great moment. We had cake. So all to say that it was a great celebration, a small school that made a very big imprint on what it meant to be grateful to be a Canadian. And we have to certainly acknowledge the great work that the principal and staff did to preparing the students and how they made it a community celebration. So we all felt very proud to be there and very honored to be invited. As well, Madam Chair, it's the start of semester 2 officially began late last week. I see our student trustee, Grace, and shared with me, as well as our student guests earlier this evening, about what was on the horizon for semester 2, and we wish them all great luck and great success. I know that report cards are coming very soon, so we just want to remind students and their parents to look for that good news, and We appreciate when we have those moments to give feedback because we want our students to improve. And it's really not about the mark, it's really about the feedback. And so we look forward to households getting that information in the very near future. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to seeing that video that is coming from the presentation in Maxwell yesterday. I totally slipped my mind until I got a tweet that said, the bagpipes are coming in Maxwell, and I thought, oh darn, I can't get there in time, so I'm sorry I missed that event. I'm looking forward to seeing the video. And Student Senate is this Friday, and I believe Grace is well prepared to do the presentation. She has a full agenda plan from what I heard at discussions earlier. So good luck with that, and we'll see you there. And happy Valentine's Day to everyone on February 14th. So I'm sure you'll be wearing red, and Superintendent Mills has got a head start back there, so that's great. So thank you for the opportunity of chairing this meeting, and Chair McMillan left the meeting last 2 weeks ago saying that he was the Iron Man, so I'm going to take the title of the Iron Lady. And as with that, I'm going to call the meeting to adjourn with a motion that the regular meeting in public session of Upper Canada District School Board, February 8th, be adjourned at 7:45, and that the special board meeting is scheduled for February 15th, that's next Wednesday, at North Grenville District High School. And I need a mover. Andy, and second by Trustee Richards. All in favor? Show of hands. Carried. Thank you. Carried. Thank you. Carried. Thank you. Carried. Thank you.